Welcome to What Grows. It's a podcast where we play with the connection between who we are and how we grow. I'm your host, Noella Moshi. So, Dianne, you have shaped this region by living so fully in it. Your influence extends across industries, boardrooms, and grassroots efforts alike because you give so generously of your time, of your wisdom, and of your network. And everyone I've met since moving here already knows you. Beyond your professional legacy, you are a lover of life, whether through travel to fun destinations, Iceland and Jamaica being two of the more recent trips that I remember, long walks, of which I've taken a couple with you, or even dancing, like that wonderful day when we celebrated you together, all women forming a dancing procession to the stage of a ballroom in the city. It is so fun to be around your energy, and I'm happy to be speaking with you because I want to learn more about what drives you, what you've learned along the way, and in what ways you continue to grow. So, welcome.
Thank you so much, Noella. Thank you for thinking of me. I consider this a total privilege and honor. And
Thank you.
welcome to Western Mass. We need more bright, beautiful young women like you. And we are happy you are here. And we have Tom to thank for that. So thank Tom for me.
Thank you. All right. So, my warm up question is if you could give your life a title, like it was a book, what would it be?
The joy of life. I have been so blessed since I was a child, primarily because I do have energy and it's a gift. I have been given a gift of energy. And I think I've been very fortunate to learn to use it and channel it in a way that's meaningful to me and has become meaningful for others.
How did you learn to use it? Was that a difficult journey or was it fairly intuitive?
It wasn't a difficult journey, but I've had periods where it's been easier to learn to how to use it and how to channel it than others. When I had 4 daughters under 8, that was a bit of a challenging time, and although I didn't even know the word, uh, I've since learned later, and Paul has told me that and reminded me that I probably had postpartum depression. And whether that was with the 3rd or the 4th daughter, I don't know, but all I know it was hard to get up in the morning, and that's not fun. So, fortunately, I've done a lot of work to get over that. Therapy, exercise, uh, everything I could think of that would help me, and people. I love people, and I'm so fortunate to be able to be around them and to have 3 out of my 4 daughters living close now in Western Mass is just a gift beyond a gift. It's really
Mm.
great.
Paul was your husband and also from what I've heard a fellow lover of life. Can you tell us a bit about him?
Ugh, he is the gift of my life, and it's a long and a short story of how we met, but I can only tell you it was a total blessing. I had just graduated from Mount Holyoke. I had moved to Boston with 3 college classmates, and we were living in Cambridge and loving it, had no money. We all had jobs, some better than others. And a friend called on a Friday night and said, I'm having a party, another college classmate living in Cambridge, and come on over. And we said, of course, we did. And about 9 o'clock that night, in walked this very handsome, really good looking guy with a friend. He had just come back from his second year of being I can't remember what they call him, a law school clerk, really, in New Hampshire. And so I never even talked to him. But at the end of the evening, he said, does anybody need a ride home? My hand went up so fast. I said, oh, well, I only lived 2 blocks away, but it was dark and I didn't know the neighborhood. Plus, I thought, well, I'll get to know him. And that was the best thing I could have ever done. So we talked. He asked me to go out and play tennis in Wellesley the next day. I said, well, I do play tennis, but I'm sure I'm not as good as you. He was a very good tennis player. He was a very good athlete. So anyway, we did play. I had forgotten that I'd told my college roommate that I would go out to lunch the next day, and I didn't know his last name. I certainly didn't know how to spell it. I'd never heard the name Doherty. Long story short, I did not cancel my lunch with my friend, although I felt awful. And I was very glad about that because it became a long relationship for his whole 3rd year at law school. And I was blessed. I am blessed.
There's something about just knowing straight away that it's your person, you know?
Oh my
um,
gosh. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'll tell you one other funny little story because it wasn't all wonderful. He was Catholic, I was Protestant, and I'd grown up Episcopalian. He from a very good Catholic family, me not, a very good Episcopal family, and, um, we were having our differences because we both wanted to please our parents, and it was less about our religious differences as our desire to accommodate family. One night he said, Some friends want me to meet them for dinner in Wellesley. So would you go out with me? And I said, Sure. Of course, anytime I could get any of his presents, I was thrilled. And then uh, so we drove out to Wellesley, which they said was halfway. It wasn't, as you know, and we get out of the car and we walk in, and we walk over to a table with an older couple. It was his parents, and he had never told me that it was his parents, and I was so mortified because I would have liked to have been primed a bit and to have known what I was getting into. But that was Paul. It wasn't important to him that I knew. He didn't want me to be nervous, so that's what he did. But it
mm,
turned out
mm.
very well, and I knew he came from good stock because they were wonderful people, and despite the differences, uh, we like any new marriage has its differences, and we resolved them, and we were lucky. And my mother, well, both my parents loved Paul too, so that helped a lot. And he loved them, and I loved his parents. So living right here, it was great.
Mm. Yeah. What makes a marriage work for that long? And just even with the differences, still be something that you really want to be in. Like you would rather be in the challenge than by yourself.
Oh, absolutely. We worked at our marriage. We definitely worked at it. We went on marriage retreats, church marriage retreats. We both started by talking with our minister and priest, and knew that we both respected downtime. My father was a big guy's guy, and I loved that about him, that he had his male friends, and Paul had his male friends. He was a very popular guy, and his friends were his athlete friends, and I they went away and did things together, and I respected that, and I did things with my friends, and we both had our together lives and we had our separate lives. And I think one of the things that was the best thing we did was investing in a place at Stratton. So when the kids were old enough to ski, we went almost every weekend. And those conversations, those 2 hours in the car up and back with kids, it's very, very important. And especially it's important to preserve your life with your husband as well as with your friend with your kids, because you can get very caught up with just your kids and forget to keep that relationship going. And it's important to take vacations together and alone with each other.
Yeah, there's something about a car ride that just we're
Isn't it?
here, we're together, we
Yeah,
might as well get
talk.
get comfortable.
Yeah,
Yeah. So what sort of things would come up during those car rides?
we loved hearing about each other's work. I mean, we really didn't get a lot of time to talk except on the weekends, and that was an even better time to talk. So he was a highly respected lawyer, and who had been home with the kids for so long, was so grateful to have adult conversation. And by then, I was probably going back to school. So then I did appreciate having somebody to share school and work eventually. And I'd done a lot of volunteer work in the community when the kids were small. That was my sort of road to sanity because um, most of our friends didn't work then. Women didn't work very often or much, other than until you had children, and then that was about it.
So there's something about having a husband, a partner that you don't just love, but you actually like, like you enjoy each other's company as friends, that I definitely think is really important. And having a curiosity about their journey, even if it's completely different than yours, and being their biggest cheerleader.
And I think friendship is very important. Love is obviously most important. But I also think respect is very important. And I really respected who he was and what he did and how he did it. I really think I learned gratitude from him. And he, he just, it came to him so naturally. And it comes to me so naturally now.
So, Diane, you were telling me how community was really central to you and your husband's relationship. Can you tell me how you started talking about community at home and how you started getting involved as a couple, as a family?
Thank you for that question. Ironically, that first night that we met, when he drove me home and we did talk for probably 2 hours in his car, uh, we both acknowledged that the community was very important to us. Of course, I had no idea then that his community was gonna become my community, but we talked about our parents' involvement in the community and that that was important to them, that we stay involved or become involved, and I had started out teaching Sunday school in Cambridge as one way of committing, not ever realizing how important that was. But then when we did get married and came here, we made a commitment to continue that commitment. And he was not in the position that I was because he was starting a new law practice, and that was taking most of his time, morning, noon, and night. And we also made a pact that we would go separate ways that in our community involvement because he didn't have a lot of time. I did have more, but we thought it was important to get to know different organizations, and that way we could share whatever we did with each other and get to know each other's organizations and basically get a twofer, I guess we could say. So that was how we started, and we continued that almost until he retired. Some minor exceptions, and we certainly supported each other's community involvements, but it did broaden our depth of understanding and our awareness. And I think the first involvement that I had was I was invited to join the Junior League. Well, now people sort of laugh and turn up their noses at the Junior League. It's a national organization that has a lot of prestige and had even more then, uh, deep in the South, and had some drawbacks in the South as well as some pluses. But it was a way to meet people my own age. And one of his friends' wives, who was a member of the league, invited me. And at that time, it was by membership only. And I was thrilled to be invited because part of it was a training course about the community. And some of my best lifelong friends came from those friendships of what we called our provisional course because you were invited, but if you didn't pass your provisional course and do the things that were expected, you weren't, you were uninvited. And we all had to do a provisional project, and we had seniors in the junior league who were running it. They were all volunteers, and they became good friends. And so I got to know the community well and to love it and respect it and to know better where I wanted to volunteer my time. So that was sort of the beginning, and it was a healthy one.
Yeah.
Now, my first volunteer commitment was NES, National Northern Educational Services, where I needed adult company, and I just volunteered for anything I thought I could be useful for, and that was, an organization that did an after-school program of tutoring for underserved kids who had potential, but just weren't needed extra help, and I loved doing that. It was ironically, Paul was asked to go on the board of NES. I did all the tutoring and the work. And that was kind of symbolic of the times. The men were the ones that had the voices and were asked to do the jobs, and the women did the work. And I laughed and joked about it, but underneath, I thought, yeah, there's something wrong here.
But it is a great way to put it that, back some years ago, men got the titles and women did the work.
Yes. No, it's pretty much true. Yeah.
Yeah. How have you seen that change? Has that changed as you've kind of grown with the community?
It's definitely changed. And I feel fortunate to have been able to ride that crest, and the ways that it has changed, there's still room for more change, but it has grown. It's been gradual step by step. For me, one of the biggest exposures was the privilege of going to China for the International Women's Conference in 1995, and that's a great story of how that happened too. But, I saw 30,000 women coming together from around the world to try to make the world a better place, and it was just unbelievable. Um, it's a long story about itself, but basically, I think women going to work for financial reasons and the pressure to have 2 incomes has had its pluses and minuses. It's given women more voice, more experience, more training about being in the community, and that's a plus, but it's also taken away from family engagement. And I was fortunate to be able to have the privilege of staying home, and volunteer work was my training and exposure in the community, and I had that.
And yeah, it takes me back to, okay, that decision. Talk me through that decision to study your MBA.
Well, that's a good question. I knew I needed something more. I knew I wasn't going to get to it at a level that I wanted to without another degree. Uh, I knew that women need the credentials more than men just to be accepted, to be for credibility, for training, for experience, for networking, for every reason possible. And so I debated seriously long and hard between social work, which was in my heart, and business, which was in my head. And I chose the business route because at that time, men who were the business community were the ones who had all the respect and all the decision making in and all the leadership opportunities in the community. Every time Paul would come home from a meeting, and this was later on when the kids were a little older, I would say to him, how many women were at the meeting? And he'd say, 0, 1, 2. He'd always have to stop and think because he'd never thought about it. And it was rarely more than 2. And he got kind of annoyed with me asking that question, but then after he started paying attention to it, he realized why I was asking. And our message from coming home from China was, we just want our voices heard. We want to be at the table. And I think China definitely enhanced my desire and probably ability to be at the table. And I think back to your question about why the MBA, and I honestly think I debated once I decided on the MBA. I said I don't know that I can ask Paul to pay for this because I hadn't worked long enough to have any savings, and he Uh, yeah, we didn't have a lot of money. He started earning $75 a week when we were first married. Well, that didn't go very far with 4 kids. It was more than that by the time we were, but anyway, I thought, "I can't ask him to pay for a 5th college tuition. We have 4 ahead of us," and I really agonized over that, and he definitely said, "Do not worry about it. Go ahead. It'll take care of itself," and I did, and that was such good advice. It helped me so much with my clients who came in who didn't have college degrees. If they had all the potential I just said, "Please go back to college. It'll be the best gift you can ever give yourself," and, I just ran into I haven't met her yet, but a woman through the library link that she heard my name somewhere, and she got kind of teary, and the woman she was talking to asked her what was wrong. She said, "Dianne Doherty is the person who told me to go to college."
That is amazing.
It's a wonderful small world, small community story, and it's why I love our community. Because if I have any assets, it's knowing a lot of people because of my various jobs and volunteer and otherwise, so it
Mhm.
is.
That's, yeah, very lovely. So you have had various jobs, worn various hats, still do in the community. Um, And was there a time when you had to put something down that was very important to you?
After I did my MBA, I went to work for an ad agency in Hartford, and that was fun. I learned a lot because I knew nothing, even though I had my MBA. And marketing is kind of on the job learning. We didn't have a budget to do advertising, so we had to do events and PR. And I learned a lot about PR through my partner, who was at a very good journalism background and was a very smart person. So anyway, I was lucky to have that. We started after we did the downtown marketing job. We started a business. Doherty Zumas, Marcia Zumas Montori was my partner, and we worked hard at that for 10 years. It was wonderful while we were building it. When the economy changed and nobody was spending money for marketing, it wasn't fun anymore, and it got very hard. Marcia wanted to get out. I didn't want to do it alone, so we had to close it down. And to me, that was a very painful, hard thing because we had won agency of the year. We had hired some of the best and brightest people in the Valley to work for us, and they were fabulous. They were creative. They were not easy to manage, but they were terrific.
Mhm. There's something about your career path that reminds me of a word that I've been hearing a lot lately, which is kind of a generalist with a squiggly career path.
I am so lucky to maximize that philosophy major, and I think that's really part of it, and that is a wonderful definition, which I've never heard. I haven't heard, but a squiggly career path, and it really is good for the kids these days. I mean, your age group, they're in jobs for 2 or 3 minutes or weeks or months or years, and then they move on to something else, and it is a great learning career as long as you can keep it moving forward. Yeah.
And the thing that ends up happening definitely with people my age is then there starts to become questions of, well, if I'm not specializing in something, does that mean I'm not moving forward? But you really are. And you have to then identify what are the threads that are common across your roles? What are the strengths that you consistently bring to those roles? And so that's kind of a question I'm curious about for you. I mean, one strength is you're a very powerful connector of people. So you see this opportunity and that person and this other person's need, and you bring all three together in very creative ways. So tell me about the skills that have kind of come in handy across your entire career.
Oh, thank you for that. You're so good at asking good questions, and, that is a skill and an art in itself, which I learned through marketing. I once did a presentation on marketing and said, "I think the reason I like it is," I used the word curious before, but in that presentation, I said, "I'm a little bit nosy." I like to know what's going on. I'm not sure I'd use that word again, but, it's really run into a lot of people your age, younger, older, who don't know what they wanna do, and I say, "Don't worry about it, just do something because it will take care of itself, you'll learn from that, you'll move on to something else, and the only way you're gonna know whether you like it or not is to actually do it." I mean, some things you can tell, "No, that's not my forte, I won't do that," but others you don't know until you try, and so I encourage, and that was part of why I love my job because we can't tell people what to do or give them answers, but we can make suggestions and we can ask questions, and that's what I loved about my both Doherty Zumas Marketing and uh, the career job at Mass Mutual, the Small Business Development Center. You can just help them to find their own answers, and that's a really wonderful gift to ask the right questions. So thank you for your good questions.
Oh, of course, yeah. So curiosity, ask the right questions.
Yeah.
I also get a very strong sense of adventure from you too. Do you get that for yourself?
I just feel like I mean, Paul and I made a pact that we'd do a major trip a year after our last tuition was paid, and that was because we both had a sense of adventure, and travel to me is the most wonderful form of adventure. But, I just enrolled in a course. It's a 4-part course. I'll tell you more about it sometime, but it's called Passion and Purpose. And I debated about that because it's a commitment of time for 1 hour, 1.5 hour classes and another hour of coaching every week, and that's a big chunk of time. So, but I'm doing it, and I'm so glad because to me, I kind of relate passion and adventure and caring for what you're doing. And so this course is giving me time to think back about what are my passions, what have been my passions, what will be my passions, because I have limited time and I want to make the most of it. And I feel like I've been lucky to make the most of my time so far with four wonderful daughters, a fabulous husband, a deep commitment to the community, and I want to continue all of those. So, yeah, while I can, as long as I can touch base, then I will continue to do it.
Passion and purpose sounds like a really fun class too. I'm, really leaning into building my strategy consulting business. And part of that is asking myself why I'm doing this. And I was working with a friend who's really intuitive, and he was talking to me about what do I really care about? And if I go back to my earliest days, what would my mother say about me that would make me stand out in a room full of 100 people? What would my best friend say about me or my sister?
Yeah.
And I was trying to identify what my strengths are and also how that overlaps with what I really deeply care about because I also feel like life's too short not to do work you're passionate about with people you enjoy and respect. Like, I think that's possible. So why not, have that as the bar? I made a note of a pact to take a trip every year after the last tuition was paid, that you and your husband did that.
We traveled very well together, and we were very lucky, and we like some small groups, and we like traveling alone. We never did big groups. Uh, I mean, we're really mostly interested in the people, the culture. So that's why we chose groups like cross-cultural journeys. We went on a couple of trips, one to India that was fabulous because we went into homes and had dinner with people that lived in the country. We learned from every experience. And somebody asked me recently, and I was with a group of people, what was the best part about traveling? And I just coming home. It
Mm,
just is. I mean, you travel and you get exposed to wonderful things and wonderful people, but you come home and you realize how blessed we are to live in this community, in this country. And at one point, we were very proud to live in this country and to have the recognition that Americans had. And I hope we'll still have and can still have, but at the moment, it feels a bit dormant and a little sad for me.
mm,
So
So Tom is definitely more adventurous than I am, but I'm working on it. And he likes to go camping and with
oh,
wildlife and things like that. And when I do go, try to be a good partner, and I go, coming home feels so good.
especially after camping, yes.
Yes.
Definitely. No, those are good experiences and good ways of learning to meld the differences because there are differences, and you have to learn to compromise, and that's a great challenge.
Yeah. I notice that the things that he pushes me on sometimes, it's because he notices the resistance is not really based on reality, it's based on a fear to extend beyond myself
Yeah.
in a way that he just wants to kind of encourage me to do, and sometimes I'm ready for it, sometimes it doesn't work, but
You
sometimes
should
I'm
thank
ready for it.
immensely for that because it is so important to extend beyond yourself. I was very shy when I was your age, even after Mount Holyoke, and I just didn't have the confidence that I should have had, but it was part of my growth. I thank him for it and do push yourself because they're all growth opportunities.
Mhm. Sometimes, yeah, I think what's the worst that could happen? Okay, I get a little rained on and a little startled by a
Yeah.
wild animal, and then I come home. And my home for me definitely is my bookshelf and my bed and specific pillows
Yeah.
and warm lighting. Those are the things that make home for me.
Relate to all of those, and I could spend my whole it's interesting. I did spend a lot of time reading, and I still love to read, and I will forever read. But I always now measure reading against an actual life experience, and I say, "So if I read 5 or 10 fewer books than I might have, what difference? I read a lot of books. I love my reading group. I would encourage anyone your age to start a reading group or join a reading group, and, it's just it's not only for the reading, it keeps you reading things that sometimes make you uncomfortable, like right now, they're reading science fiction. I don't like science fiction, but I have to read it. Uh, but I think anything that gets you exposed to things you don't read, but also for the group of friends you make out of it. Because when you meet with somebody once a month for, in our case, 50 years of our reading group, will have its 50th anniversary in June, and I'm so happy to be able to host it. And some of our original members are still there and will be there.
Yeah. I have a question about friendship, and how that takes shape for you in this community, in general, because I consider you a friend, like you're a mentor, but you're also a friend, just someone I enjoy talking with.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and if you kind of surface level, we're from such different experiences and walks of life, but there's something underlying it, and I don't know if it's values or if it's just a general curiosity or interest in the world. Like, what makes lifelong friends for you?
Lifelong is part of the reason, but I love younger friends. My very wise mother-in-law always said, and she's very smart. She was a little bit hard to get to know. I loved her dearly. Uh, but Paul helped me with that. And he benefited and suffered from it. So he knew it well. But anyway, she always said to me, stay involved with the young, get to know the young people, have young people around you. And boy, do I know that now. I knew it then, but I always loved kids, but now my definition of young has greatly broadened. It's like everybody in the world. And so I'm so grateful when I can make new young friends. But when you've worked with people for a long time and get to know them in a lot of different dimensions, that is, and common denominators is huge to friendship. And you just name them. For me, it's been community, it's been education, it's been intelligence, it's been curiosity, it's been personality. I mean, I have a lot of things that I've been lucky enough to choose my friends around, and I met probably my closest peer friend right now is a woman that I met in a meeting, and she said she wanted to go deeper, not broader. And I thought, ooh, I sat across the room from her. I'd never met her. I went over to her afterwards and said, I'd love to get to have coffee with you or something. And it turned out she lived like 2 blocks from where my work was. So we often had coffee. And it turned out she also did jitsu, which I'd never heard of. And I was having some physical ailments at the time because I did a lot of athletics at that age. And she said, "Oh, come on over. I'll work on you." She's basically a healer, and so I really got to know her well and loved her and respected her. Turned out she has a doctorate in creativity. So
Wow.
for so many reasons, our friendship has continued, and I consider her such a privilege in my life.
I'm at the stage where my daughter is 2 years old. It's
Right.
kind of the thing that I have in common with the people around me is that we're all parents.
Good.
And I sometimes feel like that's not enough to have in common. I want more, you
It's
know?
it's more than you realize. It's a lot,
Yeah.
and you do have a lot because you care about your kids, number 1, so but I felt that exact same way, and it's why, believe it or not, when we were first married, I always chose to talk to the guys at the parties because they had more to talk about. I talked about all day with my friends about kids, and I felt exactly the way you do, so find your men friends too. And now you don't have to because the women are working, so you do have more interest. But you will be surprised at parenting is a source of friendship. organizations are like the junior league I mentioned, and I would ask you to consider that, or any volunteer job that you get involved where you can get engaged for a long enough period to get to know the people. And it takes time because with a lot, you'd only meet once every other month or every quarter, and that's just not enough. I worried about that same thing, but now I have as many friends as I could possibly want, and um, I'm so blessed. But it's hard at the beginning because you have your standards, you know what you want, but they don't all fit into that until you get to know a lot of people. To be for the close friends, you can have I have a lot of broad general friends, but it's the close friends that matter, where you really have the meaningful conversations.
Yeah. I mean, I because we've hopped around quite a bit, I feel sad that my close friends are not all in one place, but thank God for the internet, we do keep in touch, but it really isn't the same thing as getting a coffee with someone. So, I'm looking forward to building even more of a community of close friends here as well. So, I have one last question for you. Um, is there something about you, an experience, a belief, or a quiet habit that deeply influences how you connect with others?
I think if I had one word that I had to say that I am so eternally grateful for, it would be gratitude. I
Mm,
I have read a lot about gratitude, and I've it's come to me, and Paul again had that, so I learned so much of that from him too, but, it's such a gift. It comes back in so many ways, and if you're grateful for something, just one I used to be I won't say ever terribly judgmental, but I was much more judgmental than I am now, and much more critical of things and people and events and situations which I than I am now. And I think gratitude has helped me so much with that. And I read and heard and that if you're having difficulty with somebody, pray for them. And I thought,
mm,
that's so strange. But then I've started doing it, and it's amazing what difference it makes. It makes you turn around in your understanding of them. It makes you more compassionate about them. And I think compassion can emanate from gratitude. And I am so lucky to have gratitude in my life. Uh,
mm,
it's, it is a it is a genuine, essential part of my being, and it's not something I have to work at anymore. It's just that it's something tiny, minor happens to me, and I'll just say, "Oh, thank you, God." And I sometimes think I'm sort of nuts, but I do. It comes out, and I feel that way. Thank you, God, because I know I'm grateful for my faith, and I know there's something bigger and more important than me. I don't have to understand it anymore. And when I was younger, I felt I had to understand it. I had to have answers. There are simply questions that there are no answers to. And it's okay as long as you have faith that there are and belief that there are answers. Somebody knows them.
yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you, Diane. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm also always looking for guests who enjoy meaningful conversations. If that sounds like you, please send me a message and let me know what you'd like to talk about. I'll get back to you. Thanks for listening.